Okay, so you want to own a container ship. You picture it, a wall of steel, the length of 4 football fields, stacked 20 containers high, sliding out of Shanghai into open water. Somewhere inside those boxes is everything. Sneakers, televisions, coffee, car parts, the entire physical internet of stuff. And you own the thing that carries it. Every box on your deck is a company paying to be there. You imagine the freight checks landing while you sleep, the ship crossing oceans on autopilot, a floating warehouse that prints money in international waters where nobody can tax you properly. That's the picture. That's what the shipping brochures sell you. Sounds simple. It is not simple. Here's what the brochure doesn't show you. You are not in the business of moving cargo. You never touch the cargo. You don't know what's in the boxes. You don't sell it. You don't profit when it's delivered. What you actually own is $150 million of depreciating steel that burns $25,000 of fuel on a quiet day, sits idle when the world stops buying, and is worth more dead than alive at the end. You're not a shipper, you're a landlord, and your tenant is the ocean. Let me show you the numbers, because the numbers are stranger than the ship. Start with the price of entry, because it's brutal. A brand new large container ship, the kind that carries 10 to 15,000 boxes, will cost you somewhere between $120 and $180 million, ordered from a yard in South Korea, China, or Japan, with a 2 to 3 year wait before it touches water. The giants, the ultra-large vessels that haul 24,000 boxes run north of 200 million, and you can't just wire the money and sail away. Shipbuilding is done in installments. You pay as they build, keel to hull to engine, and if freight rates collapse during those 3 years of construction, you take delivery of a $200 million asset into a market that no longer wants it. That's why most owners don't buy new, they buy used. A 10-year-old ship might cost you 30 to 50 million, sometimes far less at the bottom of a cycle. And here's the first thing that should worry you. The price of the exact same ship can triple or collapse in 18 months, and it has nothing to do with the ship. The steel doesn't change. The engine doesn't change. What changes is one number, the charter rate, and that number is the entire game. And ships come in tiers, just like real estate. A modern, fuel-efficient vessel with a clean engine and low emissions is Class A property. Everyone wants it, it charters at a premium, and the big lines line up to rent it. An older, thirsty ship that burns more fuel and belches more carbon is the rundown building on the wrong side of town. It works, but you'll take whatever tenant you can get, and in a soft market, that means it sits at anchor earning nothing while the newer ships get the cargo. The gap between those two ships isn't the metal, it's the fuel bill and the regulations, and both are turning against the old. So let's talk about where the money actually comes from, because it is not what you'd guess. Your ship makes money in one of 3 ways, and you have to choose. The first is the spot market, the voyage charter. Someone needs boxes moved from Rotterdam to New York this week. You name a price, you carry them. You get paid for that trip. High risk, high reward. When the world is desperate for ships, the spot market is a gold mine. When it isn't, your ship sails half empty at a loss, and you're still burning fuel. The second way is the time charter. This is the landlord move. You rent the entire ship, crew, engine, and all, to a big shipping line like Maersk or MSC for a fixed daily rate. For 1 year, 3 years, sometimes 5. They tell it where to go. They fill it with their customers' cargo. You just collect a check every single day, whether the ship is full or empty, sailing or stuck. This is the boring, beautiful income the smart owners want. Predictable rent on a floating asset. And here is the reversal that runs the whole industry. That daily rent is one of the most violent numbers in global finance. A mid-sized container ship might charter for $15,000 a day in a normal market. During the pandemic boom in 2021 and 2022, when ports jammed and everyone panic bought ships, that same vessel chartered for over $100,000 a day. $100,000. Some owners signed multi-year deals at the peak and locked in numbers that paid off the entire cost of the ship in a single year. Read that again, the ship earned its own purchase price in 12 months. And then, just as fast, rates fell back to earth, and owners who signed at the bottom watched the exact same vessel earn a fifth of that. Same steel, same ocean, 5 times the difference in what it's worth to hold. And this is why the choice between those first 2 income streams is the real decision an owner makes. Sign a long-time charter at a fixed rate and you've traded the upside for safety. If rates explode next year, you're locked in low while someone else gets rich. Play the spot market and you keep the upside, but you also keep every downside, every empty voyage, every week the phone doesn't ring. The great fortunes in shipping were made by owners who read the cycle exactly backwards from the crowd. They signed long charters when rates were sky high, locking in a fortune just before the crash, and they stayed on the flexible spot market when rates were on the floor so they'd catch the recovery. Most owners do the opposite. Most owners chase the last good year, and the last good year is exactly the one that's about to end. The third income stream is the one nobody puts in the brochure, and it's the strangest of all. Your ship has a scrap value. When she's 20 to 25 years old and too expensive to insure and too slow to compete, you don't retire her. You sell her by weight. A large container ship is 20 to 40,000 tons of steel, and that steel gets beached at a breaking yard in Alang in India or Chittagong in Bangladesh, where men with torches cut her apart by hand and sell the metal. At a few $100s a ton, that carcass is worth $10 to $20 million. So your asset has a floor, a guaranteed final payday written in steel. In a bad market, some owners make more money scrapping the ship than sailing it. Think about that. The most reliable revenue your vessel will ever produce is the day it dies. Now, the costs. This is where the fantasy quietly drowns. Fuel is the monster. A big ship at economical speed burns 40 to 70 tons of fuel a day. At current prices, that's $25,000 to $40,000 every day before you've earned a cent. Push her to full speed to make a deadline and fuel triples. This is why you see ships crawling across the ocean at 16 knots instead of 24. It's called slow steaming, and it's not laziness, it's survival. Every extra knot costs a fortune in burned fuel. The single biggest lever on your profit isn't the cargo, it's how fast you're willing to go. Then the crew. 20 to 25 people live on that ship for months at a time. A captain, engineers, deckhands. And you're paying wages, food, and rotation flights home from wherever in the world the ship happens to be. Then maintenance, which never stops. Rust is constant, engines need overhaul, and every 5 years the ship must be pulled out of the water entirely for a dry dock inspection that can cost millions and takes her out of service for weeks. Then insurance, hull, machinery, and the terrifying one called protection and indemnity, which covers what happens if your ship sinks, spills oil, or blocks a canal. Then port fees, canal tolls. A single passage through Suez or Panama can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And financing, because you almost certainly borrowed most of that $150 million, and the bank wants its payment whether the ship is earning or not. And here's the cruelest cost of all, the one that isn't a line item: idle time. A ship earns nothing sitting still, but it costs almost as much to keep alive at anchor as it does at sea. Crew still eats. Insurance still runs. The bank loan doesn't pause because your ship is parked. So every day between charters, every week waiting for the market to turn, every month a used vessel sits unwanted at the bottom of a cycle, is a day you pay to own an asset that's paying you nothing. The dream was a ship that prints money while you sleep. The reality is a ship that spends money while you sleep and only sometimes makes it back while you're awake. And now the trick that makes the whole thing possible, the flag. Your ship needs a nationality, a country whose laws it sails under, whose taxes it pays, whose safety rules it follows. You'd assume an American owner flies an American flag. Almost none do. Instead, they register the ship in Panama, Liberia, or the Marshall Islands. Tiny nations that will happily sell you a flag for a fee with almost no corporate tax, cheaper crewing rules, and light regulation. These are called flags of convenience, and they are not a loophole hiding in the corner, right? They are the mainstream. More than 40% of the entire world's shipping tonnage flies one of those three flags. Liberia, a country of 5 million people, one of the poorest on earth, is the registered home of thousands of the largest ships in existence. Your floating asset lives legally in a place it will never visit because that's where the math works. So now you understand the machine. A borrowed steel box, flagged to a tax haven, rented to a shipping line, burning fuel it can barely afford, worth a fortune 1 year and a scrapyard the next. What makes it fragile? Everything is fragile because everything is timing. This is a business with almost no ability to react. When freight demand spikes, you cannot conjure a new ship. It takes 3 years to build one. So rates explode because supply is frozen. Owners see those sky-high rates and rush to order dozens of new ships. 3 years later, all those ships arrive at once, right as demand cools, and the market floods, rates collapse, and everyone who ordered at the top is now sailing a brand new vessel in a market that's underwater. Then no one orders, the fleet ages, demand recovers, and it all happens again. Boom, glut, bust, repeat. The container shipping cycle has ruined more fortunes than almost any market on Earth, and it ruins them the same way every time, with a delay you cannot escape. And on top of that slow cycle sits pure chaos. One stuck ship in the wrong place can freeze the entire planet. In March 2021, a single container ship called the Ever Given, a quarter-mile of steel, turned sideways in the Suez Canal and wedged itself between the banks. For 6 days, it blocked one of the busiest trade arteries on Earth. Roughly 400 ships piled up behind it. An estimated $9 billion of trade sat frozen every single day it stayed stuck. One gust of wind, one ship, one bad angle, and a chunk of the global economy simply stopped. That's the world your asset floats in, which brings us to the story every ship owner knows, the one that shows what happens when the cycle turns and the money runs out. In 2016, Hanjin Shipping was the 7th largest container line in the world, a South Korean giant. For years, freight rates had been grinding lower. Too many ships, not enough cargo, the classic glut. Hanjin bled cash trying to keep its fleet moving, and one day, the lenders said no more. The company filed for bankruptcy. And here's the part that sounds impossible. The moment it collapsed, ports around the world refused to let Hanjin's ships dock because no one would guarantee the fees to unload them. So the ships just stopped. Dozens of enormous vessels sat anchored offshore, drifting in international waters, loaded with an estimated $14 billion of other people's Christmas cargo, with nowhere to go, and crews running low on food and water. Sailors were effectively stranded at sea for months. The cargo owners couldn't get their goods. The ships couldn't be seized fast enough. A 70-year-old company evaporated, and its steel floated in limbo because the one thing that keeps a ship moving isn't fuel or crew. It's the assumption that someone, somewhere is still paying. When that assumption broke, the whole fleet froze mid-ocean. So how does anyone survive a business this brutal? They're changing the machine. The modern container ship is quietly becoming a different kind of asset. New environmental rules are forcing owners to burn cleaner fuel or install expensive scrubbers, which is quietly killing off the oldest, dirtiest ships and tightening supply in a way regulators, not markets, now control. Owners are ordering vessels that run on methanol and ammonia, betting that a green ship will charter at a premium and dodge future carbon taxes. The ships themselves keep getting bigger because a vessel that carries 24,000 boxes costs less per box to run than one that carries 10,000. Economies of scale on a scale that's hard to imagine, and the shipping lines have started buying the ships instead of just renting them, folding the whole chain on box, ship, port, and delivery truck into one company so they capture the boom years instead of paying rent to owners like you. The independent owner, the pure floating landlord, is getting squeezed from both ends. But the fundamental trade never changes. You are still buying a steel box, praying the cycle turns your way, and holding an asset whose greatest certainty is the day you sell it for scrap. So here's the truth the brochure will never tell you. A container ship looks like a machine for moving the world's cargo. It's actually a bet, a $150 million wager on a number you don't control, made in a market you can't outrun, flagged to a country you'll never see. The cargo was never the point. The boxes belong to someone else. The profit belongs to whoever guesses the rate right. You're not selling transportation. You're renting out steel and betting on the ocean's mood. The ship carries the world's goods, but it was never the goods that made you rich or ruined you. It was the water underneath and the timing you never quite owned.